What's up, guys? Today I'm up at the Forest of Arden, somewhere near Birmingham. I'm presenting or hosting an F1 session at an event today. But because it's Monday, we're going to try and squeeze in and ask Elvis. There have been loads of great questions, even though there's been no actual Grand Prix this weekend. So let's crack on with as many as we can. Right, well, I'm in the middle of a beautiful scene, as you can see, in the middle of a golf course, or not in the middle of the golf course, but on the edge of a golf course, here to do this F1 conference that's happening just around the corner. So we're going to get into a couple of these questions as quick as I can, because I've only got about 20 minutes before I've got to go and do my bit. Right, let's start with this one from James Buckingham. James Buckingham says, would Mercedes running the W08 at Goodwood Festival of Speed be considered testing, since they're running a hybrid power unit? Did they have to get special permission from the FIA to show off their car without causing issues? Good question, because the Festival of Speed, of course, just happened this weekend. I didn't get to go for the first time in years. I was gutted. I had proper FOMO watching all the pictures come in on Instagram and stuff, and I've always been working there, actually, largely, so it's a real shame not to be there. But to answer your question, James, which is a good one, the rules were changed, I think last year, to allow current cars to do demonstration runs, which is what that was at Goodwood. So Goodwood classes as a demonstration run. Within the regulations, you're allowed 2 of those per season, per team. You do have to notify the FIA and get permission for it, and it has to be done on special Pirelli demonstration tyres. Let's let the lawnmower go past. Noisy. Has to be done on proper Pirelli demonstration tyres, which you have to request from Pirelli in advance. They will send you some. They are kind of blank, nondescript, certainly they're not the same compounds or constructions that we race on, so it's nothing that you can base performance data from. And you're also limited to 15 kilometres per run, which is nothing in Formula 1 terms. Perfect for going up the hill at Goodwood. It's there to put a demonstration on for the crowd, to kind of promote Formula 1 and to promote your team, and to allow the teams to show off current technology, which is what the W08 is. It's not the W09, of course, but that is, you know, we have limited numbers of those, and they're in the midst of a Grand Prix season, so to get that to a demo event is asking a bit much. But the W08 is as close as you're going to get to modern current machinery, and if you were at Goodwood and saw it, I hope you enjoyed it. And on a similar note then, let's go with this one from Phil Jones, who says, hey Mark, with the Goodwood Festival of Speed taking place, does anything get changed on older F1 cars to make it easier to run at events like Goodwood compared to their original Grand Prix spec? Not very much. It obviously depends massively on the car, but for most cars what you'll do is you'll raise the ride height up a bit so that there's no chance of bottoming along bumps around these kind of circuits. I guess you'll detune the engine, and by that I mean just turn the settings down so it's not running at its maximum. The last thing you want it to do on a demo event is to blow up. You want it to be able to run over and over again without any complications. So you'll detune all the settings, you'll put maximum traction control on, all of those kind of toys, if the car has them, to allow it to be easy to drive up the hill without any incidents. What you want is to put on a bit of a show, spin the wheels up, burn some rubber, make it exciting for the fans, but you don't want the car spinning off over a bump or anything like that, or the engine having some catastrophic failure, which, you know, if you go back a few years, that was a regular occurrence on most Formula 1 cars. So everything's just dialed back a little bit, but dialed up in the areas like being able to generate wheel spin and tyre smoke for the fans. All about the fans on these events. Right, let's go with this one. Paul Gardner says, why is there a pit window during races when teams can pit whenever and as often as they want? My guess is that it's a window based on tyre life, but it just seems pointless having a window. Well, the idea of a window, at first I answered this question on Twitter directly to Paul, and I said, look, the pit window is a period of time, generally speaking, that the teams will refer to when it's within their pit window, which is the period of time that they are expecting to be able to make a pit stop within their strategy. So, you know, they might have a plan A strategy which sees them pitting between lap 10 and lap 15. That then becomes their pit window, and if you hear an engineer talking to a driver on the radio saying, right, we're coming into the pit window, that could be what we're talking about. But then I thought about it a bit more, And actually Paul responded with some further questions, and it actually, thinking about it more, there are various ways to describe what is a pit window, because the commentators will often talk about a pit window, and when they're talking about it, they're talking generally in more general terms about tyre life. So Pirelli will give the media and the teams a suggested tyre life for each compound. So they might say the soft tyre will last between 15 and 20 laps at any given circuit, for example. That means the commentator will take that information and they'll look at the race as a whole, and they will be conveying that to fans by saying, look, we're coming up to sort of lap 10 or lap 15 or whatever it might be, and say, look, we're approaching the pit window. And you often even see that graphic on the screen talking about the pit window. That's a more general pit window based on tyre life. But the teams, their pit windows are constantly changing thing, because it can refer to, yes, tyre life, but also it refers to the gaps that they have behind. When they make a pit stop, they want to target a gap in the traffic that they're going to slot into, that gives them some clear air or doesn't put them behind one of their main rivals, for example. So their pit window is changing depending on the gaps they have to the cars behind. We might hear an engineer saying to a driver, we need to push for the next 5 laps to be able to achieve our targeted pit window, for example. And then the other thing is that they're talking about drivers that are further down the field, perhaps a main rival that's already made his pit stop or is chasing through the pack towards them, but they consider a main rival. And you might hear somebody say, we've got, Vettel, who's back in 5th place, but he's approaching our pit window. And that means that he could be approaching the window where the lead team, if they stop, would drop into. And so teams have to factor all of these different things in. So actually, to answer the question again, when we're talking about pit window, it's not necessarily an absolute straight answer. There are various, ways that people describe a pit window, but there's nothing in the rules, which I think was what Paul was originally getting at. There's nothing in the rules to say there's a pit window, you must pit here. I think most people know that, but actually it can be a bit more complicated than that. Right, at Big Daddy _Jason, we'll use that version, not the other version of your Twitter handle, says, I'd love to know what an F1 engine looked like with the rocker covers opened and the parts out. What are the differences between a road car engine and F1 engines if they were side by side? No doubt a lot, but we always hear about the application of road cars in F1. Okay, a couple of parts to that. The transition between F1 to road cars isn't that great anymore in terms of technology, certainly in terms of engine technology. Some things definitely do, and some of the hybrid technology that we've been working on over the past few years in Formula One is definitely helping to shape the way that manufacturers are working on their own road car products. What would they look like side by side? First of all, there's no rocker covers on a Formula One engine, so that's the first thing. But if you lined up 2 engines next to each other, a Formula One engine and a road car engine, first of all, road car engines vary enormously, so there's a massive spectrum of road car engines that all look very different. The biggest obvious difference that I always found when looking at a Formula One engine, when you stripped away all the ancillaries, is just how small the internal combustion engine is on a Formula One car. It's tiny when you think about what's packed inside it, and the weight of it. It's incredibly lightweight compared to its road-going equivalent. If you took a V6 of the same size from a road car, it would weigh a lot more and be substantially larger in its size. So those are the biggest main differences that you would see if you line them up next to each other. The technology is vastly different, but of course there are some very, very high-end, high-spec road car engines that are perhaps not a million miles away from a Formula One engine. There are other road car engines that are unrecognisably different. So the technology in the road car varies greatly, so it's very difficult to compare, but weight and size perhaps the most obvious ones. What else have we got? Let's go with right, Fergal Tierney says, hi Mark, what's your view on the huge performance shortcomings of the Williams? Is it power plant, aero, or what? Is it a case that they've gone backwards and the others stayed the same in the past few seasons, or have they stayed put and the others have pushed on? Well, I think we can safely say it's not the power plant. They're using the class-leading Mercedes power plant, aren't they? So we can definitely rule that out as being one of their major shortcomings. That means then it has to be the way that power plant or that power unit is integrated to the chassis, how it works with the chassis, how the aero platform works on that car. Those are the areas you've got to look at, the shortcomings, and I think they have made some massive shortcomings. So the answer is to the question, Williams have got it horribly wrong. And you've got to say it's horribly wrong, given that they've got this class-leading power unit, which we know is probably the best power producer on the grid, and so their car must be pretty terrible to be able to deliver such poor performance with that in the back of it. So every other area of it can be pointed at as to why they might not be working so well. But in answer to have they gone backwards and others stayed the same, nobody has stayed the same. The rest of the grid has definitely moved forward at an alarming rate. You know, these power units particularly have been pretty stable. The regulations in that sense have been stable for a few years now. Most of the power unit manufacturers are starting to converge at the front. Most of the teams are starting to get their head around how they best work and how the aero platform should work around it. So actually everybody's taking giant leaps forward, giant strides forward in terms of performance. Williams, I don't think they've even stayed the same. I think they've taken a step back this year, which is a disastrous state of affairs. And they've clearly got some fundamental problem which has led them. They've obviously got a fundamental problem with the car, but they've got a fundamental problem that has led them down that design path. Because with all of the simulation and the technology and the tools available to a modern Formula One team, and I know that Williams are one of the smaller teams in terms of funding, but they still have incredible facilities and technology up at Grove. So they've got some kind of fundamental issue that has led them in this direction over the past few seasons, but again, you know, this season perhaps even more so, to focus their development in an area that clearly hasn't worked. And without knowing the ins and outs, we can't know specifically what's wrong, but they are starting to take small steps forward. And that's the problem with a smaller team. When you do get it wrong, it takes you forever. You can't just start throwing development time and resource and, you know, money at all of these problems when you just simply don't have it. So you've got to be very careful and clever with your updates, focus on updates that will give you the best use out of your funds, out of your money. And I think Williams are doing that. What I like about Williams is their fighting spirit. They are not giving up, they are fighting hard, and I feel for everybody within that team, because when things aren't going well for you as a Formula One team, you end up working harder, generally, you end up working longer hours, you end up working harder for almost no reward, and that can be soul destroying. But the team is a tough team. They've been in difficult situations before. They are not giving up, and at some point things will turn around for them. And the day, and a little bit like in the sense of McLaren right now, things are starting to look good. When it happens for Williams, which I've no doubt it will feel so much better. They have stuck together as a team and dug their way out of trouble. Right, I have got to go and do some work. I'll catch up with you later, and we'll try and get a couple more questions done, and yeah, see where we go from there. Right, back home, obviously. So let's crack on with a couple more questions. The event went very well, by the way. Really nice crowd, lots of interesting questions. The question that always comes up, by the way, is about Formula One as a whole. And I'm talking about how great Formula One is, of course, during these events. And then the first question that always comes up is, when is Formula One going to become more competitive? When is it going to become closer and fairer? It seems unfair to me. And it's a really difficult one to come back and go, yeah, I mean, you kind of got to agree. I wish it was fairer. I wish it was closer. I wish it was a more level playing field. And I keep referring people to 2021, saying, look, the next big rule set change is 2021. They're working on it right now, and those are all the factors they're trying to consider. But there's a little voice inside my head saying, I still don't really think it's going to be that much different. Anyway, fingers crossed, let's hope it is. But that's another message and another story altogether. Let's get on with more questions from you guys. Start with this one. Matthew Worrell says, with the drama of the Austrian GP, do you think we should have more races with lap times around 1 minute and higher lap counts? Well, look, the Austrian GP was great for a lot of reasons. And the fact that the circuit was a big part of that, but it wasn't just that it was a short lap. It's the nature of the circuit, the long straights punctuated by slow corners, heavy braking zones, and that allowing overtaking opportunities. So a short lap time is not the answer to all F1's problems, of course, but looking at the Austrian Grand Prix, You've got to do it with a slight pinch of salt because, of course, Mercedes were kind of racing with one arm tied behind their back because of their cooling problems. And I absolutely believe that if they hadn't had those cooling problems, they would have probably disappeared. You know, they would have qualified on pole and disappeared out in front, probably, or at least been properly in the mix. So we may well have been looking at a very different result and yet another Mercedes domination if they'd been able to run at full power. So we can't look at Austria and say, you know, why was it so great? Perhaps that's the answer to everything. It wasn't. It was great for lots of reasons, as I say. And I think that a shorter lap, yes, a shorter lap does play a part because, of course, there's a number of things, isn't there? There's the traffic, the fact that the field doesn't spread so much as it does on a long lap with fewer circulations. And so you're always coming through traffic. Finding gaps in the traffic to make pit stops is tricky. And back markers can get involved and can play a part. So there's loads of reasons. You know, it's not got horrendously long straights. That circuit particularly has some straights, pretty decent length straights, but they're not Canada spec. And they have lots and lots of braking zones where overtaking is possible, coming quick and fast, one after the other. That's why it works. It's one of the reasons it works, at least. But I don't think it's as simple as looking at Austria and saying, right, short lap time is the answer. And on the similar note, when it comes to the Austrian Grand Prix, this one from Harsha Kant says, "Hi Mark, do you think the engine overheating issues will affect the Mercs in Silverstone also, because the temperatures are expected to be high as well? Do the overheating issues depend on the circuit characteristics as well?" So I don't expect Mercedes to be hampered by the same problems, partly because I don't think Silverstone's going to be anywhere near as hot, but even if it was, it's a very... Here we go. Wilson, be quiet. Even if it was really, really hot at Silverstone, which it can be, it's a very different type of circuit. It's much more open, it's much more fast and flowing. It's not a start-stop circuit like Austria is. And so for those reasons, as well as the altitude, of course, Austria is very high, meaning the air is very thin, which means it's harder to cool everything anyway, because there's literally less air flowing through all of your cooling systems. You don't have any of those problems at Silverstone. And on top of that, Mercedes are very much aware, even more aware than they already were, of what happened in Austria, and I've no doubt that they will come slightly better prepared if it were to be a really hot Silverstone with perhaps some even bigger exit ducts that might give them something, some other solution. I know they can't fix the entire problem because it's radiator and cooling system based, and they're working on that's coming later in the season, but there must be some kind of short-term, almost like a band-aid fix they can bring to Silverstone if they need to. So I don't expect that to happen again, and I expect them to be back on form at Silverstone, if you like. Lewis Dobson says, talking about pit stops, does the jack need to be manually operated, or can there be a semi-permanent jack left in the pit box that raises when the car's over it? No, it does need to be manually human operated. And people, one of the other questions I always get at these events, because I show a video of a pit stop and I talk about pit stops, people always say to me, how fast do you think they can go? You know, we're under 2 seconds on occasions now. How quick is the ultimate time? And my answer to that, and I honestly believe, is the only way to go faster than 1.7, 1.8 seconds, which is the ultimate I've ever seen happen in Formula One, is to start really automating some of the processes, like the jacking process. The jack is one of the slowest operations in a pit stop because you've literally got to wait for the car to get up in the air to get the wheels off. So we could potentially speed up those pit stops if we had some kind of automated system, like a ramp that the car drove onto, for example. So by the time the car stopped, the wheels were already in the air. It's not far off that, by the way, now, but that's perhaps the only way I could see it being improved, and the rules at the moment prevent that. So yes, it has to be manually operated by a human. What have we got here? Stefan78 says, what's your plan with Electric Tuesday? Is it finished for the time being? I just wondered why Formula E just can't buy Tesla's new Roadster technology for their next gen car. So Electric Tuesday, for those who've been with me for a while, that was a regular segment every Tuesday where we talked about electric technology, whether it's cars, drones, you know, anything. No, it hasn't gone. I mean, it sort of has gone because I haven't done it for ages, but not a conscious decision. Mainly because of the number of videos I've been able to do at the moment because of this constant filming schedule that I'm on for the Wheeler Dealers Dream Car project means that I haven't been able to regularly upload a sort of schedule across a week. And that's really the only reason. So I've kind of been non-committal to it just because I literally got to be non-committal to anything at the moment. I'm trying to stick with the Ask Elvis videos on a Monday. I'm sticking to the race preview videos with the giveaway, the prize giveaways that are coming before every Grand Prix. So those two are the ones I'm really trying to stick hard to because I know that you guys like them. Everything else is going to happen as and when it can. And I would love to bring back Electric Tuesdays. So I guess watch this space. And finally, right, this is Brian Rebholz, and he's talking after the Austrian Grand Prix, and he says, great race today. Do you think if the FIA added a mandatory two-stop race, having to use all three compounds, the teams would find a way to manage it by reducing speeds or use it to try and help on strategy? Well, this is a solution that lots of people have talked about, and I kind of think if we're looking short-term to try and help improve the strategic element of races and perhaps to introduce a little bit more unpredictability, why not introduce, we've already got one mandatory pit stop, why not make it two? And let's, instead of having to use two compounds in a race, let's use, you know, all three. I mean, we don't even have to use all three. Maybe we just introduce two mandatory pit stops. I'm all for that in the short term. It's not the biggest, it's not the fix to everything, but it could be a nice short-term fix that might help. Somebody like 3 streets away must have closed the front door. That's what that is. Anyway, yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it tried or at least experimented with. And Formula One are doing a lot of work in testing out solutions like this in the world of sim racing and esports. It's a really great platform to be able to try things over and over again, hundreds if not thousands of times, to see what the outcome of those changes might be. So I'd love to see that happen around a mandatory second pit stop. It may well have already happened. I'm not fully across what they have been testing, by the way, so I'd love to see it. I think it could be a nice mix. The one-stop races, which Formula One has definitely become more often than not, tend to be dull on the strategic side. So why not make it two instead of one? It's just a simple wording change and would actually throw quite a bit more balls up in the air, if you like, for the teams to juggle about when they make those pit stops. I have no doubt over time teams would find out a way to make it, you know, to find the optimum solution with every set of compounds at every circuit, and perhaps we'd have everybody doing the same thing. But at least there are more opportunities for things to go wrong. There are more opportunities for undercuts and overcuts. You know, the pit stop itself is an event within the event, so there'll be more of those. So I don't really see too many downsides in giving that a go. But there's always unintended consequences, so I'd love to see that tested in the virtual world before we try it out. Anyway, that is about it for this week. Thank you very much to everybody once again who sent in questions. I really appreciate it, particularly on non-race weekends, because obviously the talking points are not there in front of us all. We're not sort of fired up by a Grand Prix to get on the keyboard and type something. So those of you that take the time to chip in and send a comment or send a question, I do really appreciate it. So thank you. You will hopefully see me again, probably not before the race preview on Thursday, but of course this time it's the British Grand Prix preview, which I'm really looking forward to. A great weekend of motorsport coming up. It's the Formula E finale, season finale from New York, doubleheader Saturday and Sunday. I'll be commentating on that for those that are interested, and of course the British Grand Prix. Let me know where you're watching from. Are you going? Are you getting together with mates? I popped this question actually on the Seed Stream app. And by the way, while we're on that subject, thanks to everybody who's downloaded Seed Stream. I hope you've seen some improvement already if you've been on it since I first mentioned it. I'm actually really enjoying it. I think it's a great platform just to get everything together. I check it every morning when I wake up. It's just a place that congregates all Formula One news, all the best stories from across the internet, videos from across YouTube, tweets and social media posts, everything Formula One related in one spot on an app that you can flick through and then go into the fuller, bigger stories that you want to get into. There's a place to put your own stories on there to you know, contribute to the content. I'm putting content on there as well. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out. It's just worth it. If you sign up before the end of July, as I said, Ollie, who's developing the app, is going to give 2 years of free premium content once the app's finished. It's very much in a beta version right now, but when it's finished, it will become premium. There will be a monthly fee. He's not planning on making that a large fee, but there will be a premium fee to allow that to happen. But if you sign up before the end of July, you'll get 2 years of that for absolutely nothing. So just go and check it out. It's worth it. It's I'm enjoying it so far, and I'd love to know your thoughts on it if you have been using it. So let me know. Either on here or in the Seedstream app itself. Anyway, that's enough from me. I've been rabbiting on for way too long. Have a great week, guys. I will see you Thursday for the British Grand Prix preview, where I have another spectacular prize from the gpbox.com to give away too. Shut up, dogs! I'm going to go and sort them out. I'll see you soon. Ta-da.